Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review the movie from 1983 by the name of Mortuary. Mwah. Scary, or one would think so anyway. Just revisited this movie with most likely the HD Blu-ray scan for free on Tubi. I'm pretty sure I saw this a while back, and chances are I happened across the VHS in the early 2000s when, Video Update was purging all their VHS. So I probably own a VHS of this, like in a clamshell Video Update rental box or something, because I'm pretty sure when I watched this, I was like, I didn't know if I'd seen it or not, and when I watched it, I'm like, oh, I think I do remember. For those of you who don't know, this movie came out in 1983, and it does star it features Christopher George and his wife, Linda Day George, but I want to say it stars this one girl who was maybe in some TV show. Was it The Waltons? I don't freaking know. I didn't, I wasn't old enough to be watching a lot of TV back then, anything but Voltron or whatever, or G.I. Joe or Transformers. Did Transformers start then? I don't know. I was watching Dukes of Hazzard and Voltron in 1983, I think. If it wasn't then, it was somewhere after then, but in the 80s I was watching that stuff. Dukes of Hazzard for sure, and I'd even join my parents watching some Dallas as well, Falcon Crest, things like that. But anyway, that's a whole nother video. But this movie features this, I think it's more or less stars this younger girl who was a star on a TV show or something like that, and some guy plays her boyfriend. But it features Christopher George, as I said, Linda Day George, and probably the most famous actor now, or since the movie came out in the decades that have gone on, that this movie also features, is Bill Paxton. A very young pre-James Cameron movie, Bill Paxton. Is really, really fun to watch him or to see him in this movie. What's cool is, I don't think I'm going to spoil too much of this movie, so I'm going to keep this, Bill Paxton information hush hush, but what's really cool is he plays this kind of geeky, nerdy character, which is really fun, listens to Mozart and stuff, so I can identify with that aspect of his character. There's a lot of aspects that I can identify with, like I wouldn't want to be I want to say his dad Christopher George? I can't remember if his dad might be Christopher George, and does Christopher George own the Mortuary? It's very possible. Forgive me, a lot of details. This movie was just like, I don't know, more or less excruciatingly kind of boring and slow and not very engaging. So a lot of details I didn't quite necessarily understand for absolute sure, but I want to say Christopher George is the owner of the Mortuary, and Bill Paxton's his son, and Christopher George basically makes Bill Paxton work for him as an embalmer and stuff. Probably doesn't pay him anything either. But Linda Day George is the mother of the main star girl character. And I gotta say, I've always been a fan of Linda Day George, found her relatively attractive. The first thing I ever saw her in when I was 13 was Pieces. And it's really funny she did so many movies around this era, 70s and early 80s and stuff, and TV as, Ants. I reviewed the made-for-TV movie Ants. And what's really funny about this is at one point she wears the exact same outfit that she wore in the final scene in Pieces. So this must be right around the same time she shot Pieces. But one thing that if I have seen this movie, which I probably had, I can't remember, but if I had seen it, one thing I completely forgot is the negligee that towards the end of the movie we find Linda Day George in. If you don't know, Linda Day George was most likely a naturally busty babe, if you will, and a lot of times, she doesn't really show her goods, if you know what I mean, or at least in things that I've seen. In this movie, she ends up in this really, kind of a nightwear, if you will, negligee, which she seems like braless, and they seem to be just sagging au naturel, and that was the most Linda Day George cleavage I can remember ever seeing. So that might have been, that might be the best part about this movie, honestly. I'm not going to go too much into it. The funny thing is about it that it's kind of ironic is the movie's title is Mortuary, so you have more of a idea that it's going to be more marble buildings and phantasm interiors goings on locations, and it's I think pretty much there's really very little of mortuary-ness in the movie, and I guess the embalming room or the embalming place or building or wherever is considered the mortuary. I think I'm not a big, fan of this kind of, after death stuff or whatever. I don't study this stuff. But one thing that was kind of disappointing about watching this again, or possibly for the first time, whatever, watching it recently, was that, you expected this to be like, a lot of this movie would take place in a mortuary, maybe teens going in there to make out, fool around, and smoke pot, and end up dying. Unfortunately, it's like nothing like that at all, and it's kind of like in my opinion, the title is a little bit of a, title bait, if you will, where it doesn't really necessarily deliver on the title, which is a bummer, because the poster is all gothic and has like a gravestone and some hand coming out of a grave, so the poster and the title make it seem like it's going to be a completely different movie than it ends up being. So it revolves around this mystery about, this teen guy and teen girl. Or honestly, I can't even frickin' remember what's going on. Honestly, I don't know if I'm getting Alzheimer's or what the fuck's going on. I meant to review this a little sooner, so it's been a couple days. But honestly, even when I was sitting there watching it, I didn't necessarily understand what was going on in this movie. It's a bunch of filler. You got just. The woman thinks the girl. Oh, I know. The guy and his friend at the very beginning of the movie are gonna go take some tires. This guy used to work for Christopher George at the mortuary. He got fired. He didn't get paid, so he's gonna go to this warehouse to get some tires, and he ends up, I think, dying. I don't think, or like disappearing. And the kid's van gets taken, and then there's some really cool scenes. That the best thing about this movie is Linda Day George's bosoms, cleavage and stuff, and the kind of softcore sex scene, which was just like, whoa, that came out of left field. That was kind of fun between the young kids, nothing involving Linda Day George, and just the early 80s-ness of the movie. There's a couple scenes, I want to say at least two, maybe just one for sure, that take place at a roller rink. And those scenes are not very long or whatever, but honestly I would have almost rather this movie be called Roller Rink and take place primarily at the roller rink, because I can remember going to these in the 80s as a grade school kid and stuff, and they play music and you just just roller skate in a circle with everyone else, and then there'd be tables and snacks for taking a break and stuff, and you'd make a day of it at the roller rink. I don't know if this stuff even exists anymore, but honestly the best part about this movie in review is Linda Day George's cleavage and the frickin' roller rink scenes. And obviously there's this fat kind of almost Shelley kind of a character, and who's also at the roller rink. It's like the friends of the main characters, like they live at the roller rink apparently. But yeah, this kid's friend ends up disappearing, ends up taking his van. He ends up seeing his van at the roller rink, but his friend's nowhere to be found. I'm assuming at some point they realize that the friend has been killed or whatever, and they, this guy whose van gets stolen and then recovered, sees Christopher George and Linda Day George doing some weird, ritual ceremony in the basement of the mortuary or something like that. So they assume that they're in on it. Like I say, I guess I won't spoil this review for anyone who might want to watch this for free on Tubi, but yeah, I'm used to spoiling stuff, so it's kind of hard not to spoil stuff. But I guess maybe more or less the review can end there. This is out on Blu-ray. I'm not gonna buy it because I found the movie to be a bore. It's a shame, because most of the times, more often than not, when you've got a horror movie, like a lower budget horror movie from the early 80s, I really tend to gel with it. But there are the rare occasions, like the original Prom Night and this film, and probably others as well, where they don't profoundly affect me in any kind of a way. And it's always interesting how, what are the factors in a movie that make an impact or don't make an impact. And part of me is like, well, is it because I grew up with Pieces, so I love Pieces, and I didn't grow up with this, so it doesn't have any impact? And you might want to say, well, yeah, that's it, that's the case, but something to refute that claim in regards to how certain movies from this era really affect me in a positive way, and that some don't affect me at all, is I never saw Blood Rage until it came out on Arrow Video Blu-ray. So I was well into adulthood and getting older and older when I first saw Blood Rage, and that was an instant classic to me. So it has, in that case, it has nothing to do with having grown up with it, because I didn't see Blood Rage until I was in my mid to late frickin' 30s, so, or older or something like that, pushing 40 when I first saw Blood Rage. So, it's not, some, whatchamacallit, nostalgia might play into me liking certain movies and stuff like that. But in the case of Blood Rage, and certainly in the case of Mortuary, that's not the case, because I loved Blood Rage when I saw it when I was pushing 40 for the first time, and Mortuary I don't like when I pretty much saw it or revisited it when I'm in my mid-40s or whatever. So unfortunately, I can't really recommend Mortuary. It's if you want, obviously it's obviously being, coming out in '83. It's obviously going to have the early '80s charm. It definitely has that. But I would say if you're looking for like early '80s charm, there's much better movies to find it in. Things maybe like Graduation Day. Not that that's an amazing movie either, but I much prefer Graduation Day to Mortuary. But it's always fun to see Christopher George in these movies. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a very big part in this movie, but it's always fun to see when Christopher and Linda Day George are paired up in a movie together. It's just like, God, you look at her, especially in the night negligee and big bosoms hanging, and you're just like, God, Christopher was a lucky guy. I don't think I wanted to do the math before I started this review how old Linda Day George is in this film, and I didn't do it. I was lazy, I forgot, whatever. But maybe I'll put the age that she was in this film on the screen if I feel so inclined to figure out the math, or the approximate age Linda Day George was in this movie. She might have been late 30s, early 40s in this film, but I gotta say that, like I say, I'm kind of a boob guy, so I enjoyed Linda Day George's cleavage and bosoms, and when she's on her back, yeah, you can tell they're real, because when she was on her back anyway, that's another video. But yeah, what ends up, I do appreciate, the kind of, I guess I can't really say that without spoiling it, so I won't say that, but star rating for Mortuary, I'm afraid, let's see here, I don't think it deserves this, honestly, but I'll give it 1.5 stars out of 4 stars for Mortuary. It's honestly more like a 1-star movie, but just because it's got Linda Day George with cleavage and early 80s and roller skating rinks and stuff, and a softcore kind of a sex scene, which was like really unexpected, that the two kids end up just naked on the living room floor in a scene that's just like, wow, usually you don't see, usually they're under covers or whatever. It was almost like softcore porn, and that was kind of fun. But it's not a complete loss, but more or less a loss, unfortunately, Mortuary. And there's so many movies like this from that era that are all blend together. There's one called Mausoleum, I want to say, and the Funeral Home. I mean, there's all kinds of movies from like this exact same era and time, early 80s, that revolve around the same thing, Mortuary and Funeral Home, Mausoleum, all this kind of stuff. I want to say Mausoleum feature is about that one hot older woman that gets possessed and has glowy eyes or something like that. And I can't remember Funeral Home. I'm sure I've seen them all, but yeah, it is. Another fun thing about this movie is to see a young frickin', early to mid 20s Bill Paxton is. I mean, he must be early 20s or yeah in this movie, because he's all scrawny, and so seeing a young Bill Paxton is kind of fun. And honestly, when the movie first starts, you kind of think he's going to have a smaller role. But as the movie wears on, he definitely ends up becoming more of a, a big character as the movie wears on. But before I end the review, one thing that I did kind of like about the movie is, you always have to have kind of a gimmick for the killer and a kind of a look. And the killer's kind of shrouded in this, black gown shroud thing with the hood and stuff. And the murder weapon of choice is one of those embalming rods with just the hose, cut off like a couple inches, off, there's a rod there, the hose is attached, and there's like a couple inches of the hose, and it's cut off. So he's running around, or he or she is running around with this big long embalming needle. They call it, there's some kind of word for it. I forgot what the hell the word for it is called, but that's kind of a cool gimmick. And you could see like NECA, if they ran out of if they already made a bazillion figures of every other horror movie icon, they just do the frickin' killer from, what's this called? Mortuary, with the gown and the hood and the big long embalming needle with the hose cut off, and it's just like whatever. But I try to, now with the inflated prices of everything, and NECA seems to really have kind of died down, so it really got to the point where I really try to chill out on the NECA figures buying these days, and and really kind of stop with the excess, purchases of things you don't really need in these times of inflating prices of everything. But anyway, that, like so many other topics, is another video on it in itself. But I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review of Mortuary, at least around the time of this video's recording and uploading. It should, is available for free on Tubi to watch. I would imagine, like all these streaming sites, that's gonna, its availability to watch for free on Tubi is gonna probably expire at some point. So maybe if this, if you've seen this video, check it out and see if you can see it and report back in the comments what you think of Mortuary. It was kind of difficult not to spoil things, but I'm like, just because it's an old movie doesn't mean I have to spoil it, because maybe some people haven't seen it. So I guess that pretty much does it for my review of Mortuary. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video.